for that opportunity. I think, we've been, Rai's been kind to us. Every year on this summit, we actually release what we call the Total Retail Survey, which is really an understanding of what consumers across the world and consumers in India more specifically are thinking about retail this year. We've been doing it for the last 4 years. So I think prior to the panel, really, what we wanted to give you was glimpses of this report and what retail consumers are really looking for this year and how life is changing a little bit. I would say, this report comes on the backdrop of consumption seeing a somewhat revival in India. Organized retail clearly living and poised for growth. And, as I was talking about panelists a little before, this is contrary to a lot of large companies not seeing that much growth and not seeing that much same store or volume growth, and that consumption basket is actually getting spread across a very large number of companies today, and which is possibly good news for the startup and the entrepreneur business in some form or shape. But clearly, I think we are still a bright spot of growth in the world for consumption per se. We are expected already clocking about 5% and looking at significantly higher, possibly only behind China, and might be looking at consumption growth actually ahead of them over the next couple of years. On a broad retail sector basis, clearly looking for accelerated growth on the organized retail side, both digital as well as physical. So clearly, I think that was the backdrop that we went in. We spoke with almost 23,000 consumers across the world, 1,000 consumers in India, male, female, millennials, baby boomers, Generation X, looking at across the spectrum. And I think some interesting insights that are coming out, which is adding towards saying that what is really the retail operating model that Indian retailers need to build towards. So unlike the West, everywhere people have grown on the back of expanding stores or expanding their footprint. Today, whether you look at digital or whether you look at omnichannel, in India it is not just about growing where the consumer is growing, but also about solving a lot of unsolved problems that organized retail solves for countries. And so that is where the whole omni-channel footprint is coming out in India. And what we have seen, I would say this year in the results, is that a lot of the trends that we've seen over the last 3-4 years are really percolating, gaining size and scale in some form or manner to build towards a large form. So the reality of omni-channel shopping gains scale, and I'll talk about some of the numbers that we are seeing. Clearly it is not just, the number of consumers who are saying they're using one channel is limited to less than 10% now. So, the number of people shopping in multiple channels, whether it be mobile, whether it be, including, channels like tele-shopping are seeing a 15%, 17% rate of monthly shopping across consumers, which is clearly, there is a size and scale towards what we call omni-channel at some point of time. It was beginning to show as a trend over the last 3, 4, 5 years, but clearly has bust into a full-scale business this year. Similarly, social influence, we've been talking about it, several years, whether it's social, whether it's mobile, the influence has dominated engagement. It is also growing beyond now in two forms. One in the form of transaction itself, so mobile transactions, clearly India is leading the turf, and there is a large amount of transaction building on that front. And similarly on what they are doing in store with it. Digital payments growing very fast, again, talk about some of that quickly. Deeper demands on the in-store experience which the consumer is making. So retail talent finally really matters. The consumer is asking for better sales staff, knowledgeable sales staff as it moves towards a more sort of the in-store experience changes itself. And similarly, loyalty beginning to earn its spurs. I think loyalty has been sort of somewhat underrated, I would say, in India in terms of its usage by the retail business, but clearly beginning to earn its spurs. Companies using loyalty coupled with some great analytics are seeing same-store growth in excess of 20-25% in some cases, and clearly doing much better than the others are. So I think all in all, it doesn't matter where the consumer is buying or which channel he's going to. It is more about, not about the footfall, but about the conversion itself, and which channel might convert that you might be less wary of, but more about where the consumer is going and building. Interesting thing, if you look at from a last year or last 1 to 4 years, consumers in India were, I would say, started shopping online just over the last 4 years, right? For 26% have first ever purchased last 1 year, 1 to 4 years, 56%, a bit behind what you would see of the global guys, only a much smaller number over the last 4 years, and the rest of it is actually much before that. But if you look at what's happened in the last 12 months, I mean, they have accelerated by far. So there's 51% of consumers saying that daily or weekly they shop online in India, whereas only 29% of them globally are daily or weekly. They are much beyond. So we've caught on how. Similar, if you look at cross-channel behavior, I was saying omnichannel is becoming a reality. There is, almost 15% people just shopping, tele-shopping. The interesting thing to me is whether you look at in-store shopping, on in-store, the daily and the weekly numbers, people shopping daily, weekly hold. The monthly numbers have actually dropped a little over last year, so whereas the monthly buying patterns of in-store are actually better. So what you're seeing is possibly the deal-seeking or the bulk buying consumer is saying that, I'm spreading my, I'm possibly getting the same prices across a longer period of time on online. I'm spreading my purchase over a period of time, and he's not making those monthly trips as many as he was earlier. And again, in India, mobile dominates the purchase cycle by far as compared to anything else, even on the online side. Pardon the busy slide, but it's just across categories, there is a large change or improvement in the category-wise online shopping. It is going across. Even if you look at categories like grocery, there is a significant chunk of people who are, firstly, I think almost 4 to 5% across categories, people are saying they're doing exclusive purchase online, only online purchases. The category is not being purchased anywhere else. If you look at the sort of pink and orange bar, which is most part of their purchase, 40% plus online, I think a lot of categories building up, 30% for grocery, that's a large number, which is something that all skeptical of whether it will build towards that, not build towards that. Toys moving to something like 30%. In clothing and footwear, of course, and appliances and electronics continue to dominate a very large chunk of the purchase, but it is going across categories, spreading across categories. The reasons that people are sort of naming out, sorry for those points of the graph, but really the largest and the big yellow chunk that you see here is really convenience, and the other one is price that people are talking about. So it is the number one reason people are stating is to go behind convenience, is why they are going after the channel, whereas the choice of retailer still continues to be very much price and value led. So the choice of channel is led by convenience, the choice of retailer is led by prices. And what we are putting into the broader value bucket is that there are pieces that consumers are willing to pay for. Same-day delivery. I mean, there are more than 67% of people who are saying that we are willing to pay for same-day delivery. We don't want 1 hour, 2 hour. We may not that many people wanting to pay for it, but a lot more wanting to pay for same-day delivery. And similarly, even if you look at the loyalty side, it is the value-based kind of options that people want out of loyalty in India, not really. So if you compare this with the global numbers, there is a lot more desire for exclusivity, VIP areas, member areas, whereas in India, it is really about collecting the reward points, earning, spending it on something monetary, member-only discounts and offers, free shipping. It is the hard benefits that count much more, even on this side. So it's why really the loyalty in some form or shape. Spoken about social media, the influence continues to grow. Yes, there is some differences across millennials and Gen X, but broadly, whether it is to keep up with latest trends, whether it's to writing reviews, whether it's to simply purchase from social media, which is still smaller but has grown to at least 1/3 of the population, there is a very large influence of social media. And in a lot of the categories, I would say there is a big shift of saying that engagement online, purchase offline. I mean, for especially grocery, FMCG, health and beauty kind of categories, there is a large chunk of engagement offline, purchase offline kind of mode. And mobile also coming of age in some form or shape of not just usage for purchase in digital, but getting used more and more in store. So interestingly, I mean, almost the number of people using mobiles in store for one of these activities, there are 50 to 60% people using mobiles in store, whether it is to compare pricing, whether it is standing there and researching products, whether it is to pay, whether it is simply accessing coupons and offers. That one came as a bit of a surprise to me as well, in terms of 52% of people really saying that they're willing to access a coupon or a discount inside the store. And I mean, looking at it from what I see on the retailers end, I'm not really sure how many are even in the place to try and offer some of those, or even have the infrastructure to try and offer some of those in places. Interesting one. Then I think as you speak a lot about digital, there is also a clear demand about the in-store experience. I mean, the role of the store clearly has been changing over the last couple of years, and some differences between what we see in men and women, and of course between millennials and Gen X as well. Clearly, there is between both. Number one is around the whole sales associate. You know, having a knowledgeable person across the categories that we've seen. There is a different role that the store is playing in the customer journey, and there is a different role that each of the channels are playing in the customer journey. It might be very different for appliances as it is for grocery. However, there is a desire to have a knowledgeable person to talk to when you visit the store. And you know, it checks out in the top three on both sides, men and women. Also, there is a large play again back to convenience. Once you've understood the product, have the knowledge, you don't want to waste your time checking out. So if you can get a self-service checkout, run it quickly, more than happy. And further up, you know, the ability to extend range. Why can't you tell me what's there in other stores? Why can't you tell me what else is available, what you have digitally? Again, the desire to connect back into omnichannel has you know, grown significantly large over the year. I think last slide, just the idea is to give you a glimpse again, busy slide, pardon me, but there isn't a really large, you know, when we ask people the question, how innovative do you consider your favorite retailer? The good news is they don't want to talk about another retailer, they want to talk about the same one, but there is no clear peg on, you know, is your current retailer really making big waves in terms of being an innovative retailer. So there is clearly the mantle of the innovative retailer that is, be it in terms of social, are you working enough and are you perceived best? So there is a mantle for differentiation around this piece, which is very much existent. I think the intent is really that between these questions and where you solve and what are some of the areas that are pegging out, India will have to create a slightly differentiated operating model, given that we don't have the reach and presence of, I mean, globally it is, you know, of course, Amazon.com got built on fairly quickly and followed by Walmart.com and Tesco.com. The brick and mortar retailers had the reach, they built up an omni-channel presence and they caught in very quickly. But in India, none of the brick and mortar retailers organized as yet have a reach that is large enough to actually just use that and build towards. So what is the operating model that will get built on this digital versus physical combination is something that will be very much true for India in some form or shape. So I think that's really what I had to give you a sense of the glimpses of the report. We will be releasing the report. It's available outside. We'll be happy to answer any questions around that or any details if you want. There is a fairly large chunk of research that's gone behind it and has a lot of cuts in terms of really understanding how the consumer is moving in some form or shape.
Thank you, and a big hand to